G'day, Bomber fans. ANZAC Day, players, ratings, add them all together. ANZAC Day player ratings. That's what we got on today. We're going to rate some players from 1 to 10. This time, by the way, I'm doing something a bit silly. I don't have a set rating for any player going in, so this is going to be really messy. Feel free to diss me down in the comments. Andy McGrath, look, the king of ANZAC Day, really. He's always good on ANZAC Day. And I held off on high ratings this week because I thought we only really had a few guys who were close to the Pies best. They probably had, a few guys who were 9s or 10s. I'd say our highest was only really an 8, and Andy McGrath was one of our best. I gave him 1 vote. I thought he was one of the guys really keeping us in the game through his defensive efforts, especially early in the first half. He just has Bobby Hill's number. It's not like Hill's a nobody either. He's a Norm Smith medalist. He has performed on the biggest stage you can perform on, and on ANZAC Day he just didn't. As he said in the interview later, McGrath is a very good defender. He had his measure. You can look at Andy's stats and judge him based on that, but you'd be silly for doing that. I think it's better to judge his performance based on Hill, who had 7 touches and a goal. And that goal, by the way, you can't really defend it. It's just a freak goal from the boundary. Hill was nowhere for about 95% of this game, and Pidge himself had the 18 disposals, the 9 intercepts, 3 intercept marks. He gets an 8. He was one of only a few guys who can hold his head high and say they got the 8 out of 10. I'm sure Brad Scott will raise that in the team review today. Kyle Langford, he is back. And look, it was you could tell we needed him in the forward line, but you could also tell that it was a player coming back in his first game back. He had those round 1 nerves a little bit. You know how players in round 1, they're just a little bit nervy. Kyle Langford kind of had that. He had a few fumbly moments. He had quiet patches throughout the game. I didn't think he was a liability or anything. I liked the way he presented and contested well, especially early on. I liked him in the first quarter. Kicked an important goal. Gave us momentum. But yeah, I feel like he floated a bit. I reckon next week he's probably back to his best. I feel like it's always hard to judge a player based on their first game back. This was as standard a first game back from an injury that you can get. He impacted, but not really enough for us to be too happy, but also enough for us to not be worried about him or anything. So Kyle Langford gets a 5 out of 10, I think. I think that's fair. Or should it be a 6? You know what? I feel like I've given some midfielders the benefit of the doubt with a 6 in the past, so I'm going to give Kyle Langford... I'm going to give him a 5. I'm going to try and be a bit harsher today. Am I? We'll see how long that lasts. Zach Merrett, he was really good. He was an important factor in us getting back in the game, the game back on our terms. That tackle on Dacos, that was hype, and that was a big moment in the game. There are moments in games like this where it just feels huge, and I think we went on to kick a few goals from there. But I mean, it's telling, it's Dacos who's running rampant, getting stopped by Merrett, and then the momentum shifting because of it. It just feels significant. It almost bumps him up a bit, in the rating because of that one moment. And look, it would have been great to see more of him later in the game. He was electric early, doing plenty for us. He was one of our best as always, but just the 9 touches after half time. And look, 9 isn't bad, that he's involved, but he was involved enough early for it to be getting closer to 15 or so, and you want the ball in his hands. He was gaining meterage. He was doing plenty with it. I think, he faded out of the game a bit when guys like Sidebottom and Dacos didn't. So individually, he was probably one of our better players, I'd say. But also, we were bashed out of the midfield. It was an absolute mauling, and that is where he plays. So, 7, 8... His first half's probably a 9. I'm going to give him a 7. I think we were just bashed out of the midfield. I can't really... I feel like this week you kind of have to give everyone in that midfield a grade lower than what you're giving them because of just how easy it was for Collingwood sometimes. Ben Hobbs, he's been a really big surprise for me this year. Or at least in the last few weeks, because I thought he started off the year pretty poor. I remember giving him a 3 once or twice, but the last few weeks he's been good. And look, it's interesting because it makes you wonder about the future because he's out of contract. I remember at the start of the year I was thinking he could be potential trade bait just because we don't have room for him in the midfield. But then also as the year's gone on, he's played more midfield minutes. I think he was in 30% of centre bounces, which is the most he's featured in this year. That could be wrong. That's off the top of my head. But yeah, I thought, it was clear at times that he was a 21-year-old playing against much more mature players because Collingwood's midfield is very old. But in saying that, I don't think he disgraced himself. I think he was probably one of our better players again. If we had to pick 5 or 6 players that were in line for votes for Essendon, Hobbs was probably up there. He had the 20 touches, a big goal. He led us for ground ball gets, 23 pressure acts. Yeah, I'm going to give him a 7. I think I'm almost ready to say that I'd be happy with an early contract extension for Hobbs. I was happy for the club to wait and see what happens with our list and whether there's a spot for him. But I feel like it's getting to the point where this is a guy that you could see really performing at another club if he gets the chance to leave. And he's playing good footy for us. I don't know. I think he's yeah. I really, you know what, maybe not. I'm going to go back on that because I just remember that Caldwell and Parrish and Sardis are coming back soon. So that's going to be interesting, seeing how he goes in the team with those guys there. Because, look, he's good when he has more freedom to play as that high half forward kind of pressure player in there, but also in the midfield like he did against Collingwood. But when those guys come back, he's probably just going to be in that forward line where he doesn't really belong. And it's tough because you want them back. Caldwell's just a player you need back, so is Parrish. Yeah, I'm giving him a 7, but going to be an interesting few weeks when Caldwell and co come back. Dylan Shiel. Tough one. Look, he came off late cramping. I don't think he played the full last quarter. I think he came on and off a bit, so it wasn't an injury, but he was cramping. And it was the first time all year, really, where we're thinking that, maybe it's age getting to him. He looked older. I thought he was really important early. He was getting drive into those legs, breaking lines, even sometimes when he didn't think he could. Sometimes it didn't even work. I remember the first quarter, he had both the most and least impressive play of the game, where he ran between about 40 Collingwood players and then got himself into space and shanked a kick going inside 50. And look, I feel like if we have a senior player starting to lose legs as games go on, it's only happened once this year because we've been managing his minutes pretty well, but it's getting to a stage where we managed his minutes in this game too, and he still really struggled. So that has me a little bit worried because I've loved Shiel this year. I think he's been really great. But yeah, I think it's clear that we're going to need to see him rested a bit as the year goes on to manage his workloads, to avoid those late fade-outs, because we can't be ending a game with 21 players. And that's unfortunately pretty much what we did. He was really good early, 3 and a bit quarters, 19 disposals, didn't touch the ball in the last. I'm gonna give him a 6. I think a 6. I think he was impactful at his best. He was making mistakes, but so was everyone in those conditions. But also, I think we needed that experience really bad in the midfield, and he just wasn't there for us late on in the game. Giving him a 6. Isaac Kako. Now, by the way, I was having a look at my old ratings. I've given Isaac Kako a 6 every week. And the thing is, he kind of warrants it. He's playing the same game every week, a goal and 10 touches. It doesn't look amazing or anything. He's not going to get a Rising Star nomination based on that. But he was the only small forward reliably applying pressure for us. 21 pressure acts for the game. To put that into perspective, by the way, Gresham had 8. So he's really hunting and he's chasing more than anyone in our forward line right now. And those are good numbers for a first-year forward. And it's the fact that they're consistent, numbers for a first-year forward, because that's not what we thought Kako was going to be. There were question marks about his defensive pressure before the year, before he was drafted, but, those have been squashed. I thought he kicked an important goal, got us back in the lead, and he got that assist that he definitely meant to do. That was a cheeky, off the side of the boot, calculated pass to Durham. Definitely. Look, I'm going to give him a 6. And the good thing is, a 6 is good, but for a young player, your first game on ANZAC Day, getting a 6, not disgracing yourself in front of 90,000, that's good to see. I think we are due a bit of a blinder, a Kako blinder. He still needs that Rising Star nomination at some stage, and he will get that. I'm very confident. Because so far this year, he's just kind of been, playing as that small forward role player, which I don't mind for a first-year player. I don't need to be seeing him kick 5 goals a game. This time last year, Nic Watson was, pretty poor from memory. And then he really got going in the second half of the year. So far, Kako's been decent, and maybe he'll get going in the second half of the year, so we'll see. Okay, so Jade Gresham, look, I don't like calling for players to be dropped or anything. I'm not one of those kind of guys, but I think we probably missed a trick having Menzie as the sub instead of Gresham. So I said before that Gresham had 8 pressure acts for the game, 1 tackle. Jye Menzie came on in the last quarter for Harry Jones, so Gresham was still playing. So he came on in the last quarter and had 8 pressure acts and 2 tackles. And look, I know that a game is built around more than just pressure, but the reason we're so easy to transition against is because we just don't have enough consistent pressure in the forward half of the field. And Menzie, he was applying that. Gresham, he wasn't. He just wasn't doing enough for us in that regard. That would be less of an issue if he was damaging with ball in hand, because that's happened in the past, but he wasn't. 12 touches, 1 score involvement, and that isn't even like it was last week where he was featuring more in the defensive half. It was pretty much 50-50 around the ground. He had the ball around the arc a fair bit, and he just wasn't really making enough happen. So look, I'm gonna give him a 3. I think he was probably our worst player on the field. There were obviously parts of his game that I liked. And look, people, I think there's been comments about, what a player needs to do to get a 1 or a 2. I think they have to be genuinely hopeless, and I don't think Gresham was. He was very disappointing. We needed a lot more than that, and I think a little rejig to our forward structure is definitely on the cards, because this is the second week in a row that he's looked flat. And the annoying thing is, this guy was great against Port, and we were talking about that pressure that he applied against Port Adelaide, that hunger and desire, and that was just... You didn't feel that at all on ANZAC Day. So yeah, that was really disappointing because, again, like I said before the game, he was our 4th most experienced player on the list. So yeah, he gets a 3. That was pretty disappointing to see. Will Setterfield, I am gonna give him a 6, but I feel like it's a major tale of 2 halves for a few players, but for Setterfield in particular, because he was immense early. I remember seeing, when I don't even know if it was Essendon, but an Essendon fan page or something, when they're posting about players at halftime that are performing, Setterfield was getting those posts, and then after that, he had 15 touches at halftime, and after that he just goes missing. 4 touches for the rest of the game after halftime. He gets moved out of the midfield, by the way. That's the least midfield minutes he's played this year. He struggles to contain their pace out of stoppages, which is probably why. His foot skills are really poor. I think he was 37% by foot, 8 turnovers from his 19 touches. So look, you could honestly argue a lower rating than he got, but I think just based on the fact that we saw so much early and that, he was getting that social media hype, I don't think you can give him anything too low. I think a 6 is probably about right. You could argue a 5. I'm sure some would even argue a 4. He is a tough player to judge, to be fair. It's always tough to judge a player who starts the game really well and ends it poorly, because you kind of forget about how good they were to start. But yeah, I think he was busy. And the weird thing is, because the game, played out in weird patches, he was busy for us at an important time, but also quite at an important time. So... I don't know. He gets a 6, but yeah, it feels a bit worse than that, doesn't it? Jordan Ridley. So again, he was one of our best players. He was probably at that intercepting best that we've seen quite a bit from him over the years. 9 intercepts, 3 intercept marks, 4 one-on-ones and didn't lose any. He did well to keep... who was it? I get these Collingwood forwards confused all the time. I think it was Mixed Day. Was he on Mixed Day? I think he was. I think it was Mixed Day. He kept him quiet, but yeah, no, Ridley was great. He was one of our, I had him as the 4th best. I wanted to give him a vote, but I just thought Andy McGrath was better. But Ridley was my 4th best on ground, and he's one of a few players to get an 8 this week. So well done, Jordan Ridley. He gets the famous Felix 8. Archie Perkins. Yeah, these are tough, actually. This is a tough week for it. Oh, all right. So, okay, look, I've seen a fair bit of division with Perkins lately from this game, because some, I've seen some say he should be dropped. Some liked his effort. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm probably leaning more towards glass half full. I think he's just such a high impact player. So, 14 touches. You check his stats after the game, you think, 14's quiet, and it would look horrible for a midfielder, but Perkins isn't a midfielder. He's mostly up forward. He's using his body well, laid a few nice tackles. He kicked a lovely goal to get us up and about. Got himself an assist as well. I'm going to give him a 6. I know some are going to disagree, and I'm not even 100% sure. I've just kind of picked a number out of a hat, but I don't think he's played bad footy in a while, and he's not at his best. But he's just kind of playing his role. And I think that's what he did on ANZAC Day. I think we'd be talking about it a bit more if those around him lifted. If Gresham had a big day, if Langford had a big day, I think that would have allowed Perkins to, get a bit more love than he is. But because, we only really had a couple of forwards really impacting, then, yeah. Todd Goldstein, the old gold. He gets his first rating for the year. How about that? We didn't think it would be this early. Look, I think he tired late. Well, actually, now, I don't know if you guys are watching the pre-game warm-up, but he was sweating bullets. That had me very worried before the game. So he didn't even tire late. He tired early. But look, I mean, he's clearly a 36-year-old ruckman. He just is. What is happening with my chair right now? He's clearly an older player, struggling with older legs, but he battles hard. And I think the great thing about Goldstein, and the thing that gives me a bit of faith, is that he is so competitive. So even when he's running out of legs a bit as the game goes on, he is going to give his all. Yes, he's probably going to need a rest or two during the year. Maybe that'll bring Vigo into it. But yeah, for games like this, ANZAC Day, first game in a while against such a good ruckman, I don't think he disgraced himself at all. I thought the ruck battle was probably won by Cameron. But I don't think he was amazing or close to best on ground. And that is mostly because of Goldie. I'm keen to see how he goes against North Melbourne next week, his old club. But yeah, Goldie gets a 7. That's pretty much exactly what we need him to do for the rest of the year. Just a solid role players game. And a spoiler alert, by the way, he is by far and away ahead in the role player vote for you guys. I did a little count just before, and he is so far ahead. I haven't seen someone win a role player vote by that much in a long time. Obviously, I still, I'm leaving it for a few days for the preview, but yeah, he's going to get the role player vote. 7-seater Peter. He was decent. And look, after last week, there was some worried about how he'd go in the wet, how he'd go after his first game back, but impressive. We talk about him not being a wet weather player, but he got a few good looks at it. He got a few nice clunks, kicked at a couple of big goals for us. And by the way, Peter Wright is now leading our goal-kicking tally after just 2 games. So, yeah, he's probably going to be in the team for a little while. He's a proven goal scorer. He's proven that he still has it. And I think his presence really helped young Caddy get around the ground more too. I think that's probably the best Caddy has looked with Wright in the team. So that is good, because that was a big worry last year. The only issue really was our weird forward positioning and the fact that we couldn't really get out the back behind him for some reason. But yeah, he gets a 6. He was again pretty good. And next week against North, we are under the roof at Marvel Stadium, which is where Peter Wright loves to play his footy. There is no ground in the country that he's kicked more goals on than Marvel Stadium, and he's played in more games at Metricon than at Marvel. So that shows you just how much he likes this stadium. Yeah, he gets a 6. I don't know if I said that. Archie Roberts, another really solid performance. He was really busy with ball in hand. He's actually winning unreal amounts of footy right now. Only 4 Essendon players have more disposals than Roberts this year. Now, I do think he had some lapses in concentration while actually defending. I think 1 came, or maybe even 2 came when he was on Jamie Elliott. 1 also was a forward half stoppage that didn't result in a goal, but I remember looking at it and thinking, you got to brush that up. Got to be better than that. It's kind of a let off the fact that it wasn't a goal. But yeah, as I said earlier in the year, the fact that we're calling him out for mistakes in a game, it shows how highly we rate him, because this is a guy so fresh into his AFL career so far. And he's not even a promising player anymore. He's just a part of our team, which is awesome after, having just played 10 games. He's going to be one of these guys that we build this team around. He's part of our future. And games like this prove that he's right up to the fight. I was going to give him a 7. I was thinking in my head, but do we give him an 8? No, I'm going to give him a 7. I feel like he's played much better footy than this. But yeah, the fact that he had 25 touches on ANZAC, you know what? I'm doubting myself. The fact it's Anzac Day, or I'm gonna give him an 8. I don't think he gets enough love across the comp. He needs some love, more love from us. He gets an 8. I'm sticking with it. Archie Roberts gets an 8. All right. Sam Durham. I mean, for the second quarter alone, he gets a high mark. That was awesome. And I really do think this is the guy that got us back in the game. Not just those back-to-back goals, which were lovely, by the way. That second one was as hype as it gets. But just his work in the centre. He was our highest clearance winner for the day. He was keeping Dacos down below his usual best. Dacos did tear up a little bit, but no one's talking about Nic being the difference. If anything, it was Josh. But no, I thought Durham was one of our best. I gave him 2 votes. So, I mean, he kind of has to get an 8. And my question to you guys, if we're starting a team from scratch, right? If we've got Essendon's, 40-odd players, we need to pick 10, or even, we need to pick 5 players to start this Essendon team again. How many players would you pick before Sam Durham? Because you could argue Merrett for leadership. I think he's always someone you'd need to pick pretty early. I'd have Caddy there too. And after that, is it Durham? Is it Nic Martin? Is it Kako? Is it someone like that? Let me know what you think down below. I think it's an interesting question because I think we're slowly realising that he's, becoming one of our most important players in the team, which is pretty cool for a mid-season draftee. Harry Jones. Well, look, the fan base has well and truly turned on this bloke. And I obviously I don't agree with that. I hate the negativity that our fans show towards players. But I do think he might need a spell. He just really isn't giving us enough right now, and it's pretty frustrating because I was concerned about height going in with the rain, and Jones did struggle to stay in the game. He was around it early, even if he was making mistakes. 10 touches at half time. But again, and this is becoming a really frustrating part of his game, he starts hot and then he just fades out of games. And again, it's happened. In the last 3 matches, he has a combined 4 disposals after halftime, and it's really bad. And I know he was subbed out of this one, so, maybe he's got an excuse here, but it's still telling. He just isn't impacting games enough consistently. And now, look, I don't think he was our worst on the field, even though he did get subbed. I'm giving him a 4, not a 3 like Gresham, because I actually thought he was lending a hand well in defence at times and roaming back down the field to help. I think he ended with 6 intercepts, which is, decent from 3 quarters for a player that isn't a defender. But that is the only stat that really favours him, I think. I reckon subbing him was clearly the play. He just didn't do enough for us again, and that is now, I think, the 3rd or 4th week in a row that we've said that. So yeah, I really wouldn't mind seeing Jones drop to the VFL, and I think it would improve our forward structure a little bit. It's a bit weird with Peter Wright, Harry Jones, Carl Langford, and Nate Caddy. It just feels, it feels a bit cluttery, and maybe a reason why we couldn't get out the back is because we had so much height. Jaxon Prior, he gets a 4-2. We're in the 4 zone. And now, before we start commenting about how Jamie Elliott kicked 5 goals, because I know someone's going to bring that up, go have a look back on those goals. Because, yes, Prior was on Elliott for a lot of the game, but I believe Roberts was accountable on Elliott more than Prior for when he kicked the goals. But I do think Prior was just a step behind the Pies forwards for too much of that game. And it sucks because he was really decent last week. He almost got the role player vote from you guys in the comments last week. And then he goes out and dishes up a really poor performance again on a big stage. It doesn't look good. Probably his first poor performance since round 2. And look, the question here is, like with Jones, does Prior get dropped after this performance? I think not, and that isn't me riding the Prior train. The train is currently stopped at the station, by the way. The train isn't moving. The conductor's taking a quick break. Another poor performance, though, and the conductor might have to hop on board another train. I don't really know what I'm talking about right now, so let's move on. Did I rate him? I don't think I rated him. I'm giving him a 4. I don't think it was bad enough to be on the 3 train. I've got to stop talking about trains. What am I doing? This is time for a break, actually. When it's time for a drink break when you talk about trains. Oh, and by the way, guys, a quick apology. I went to the shops. I tried to find Portello because I think I got 3 recommendations for that. I went to try and find it. I went to a Bottle-O because I saw that there was a Bilson's vodka Portello, and that is what I'm going to try and get for next week. This week, instead, I've unfortunately gone with the Essendon Gatorade, the red-flavoured Gatorade, which was the second recommendation I saw last week. So apologies, I don't have the Portello, but I'll have it next week. Keep leaving drink recommendations down in the comments below, and maybe in the future, I'll mix them. It could be an ice break mixed with a Portello. That'll taste nice. All right. Now, Mason Redman was not his best game. But honestly, I don't even think he was bad enough to be on the 3 train. Why am I talking about trains so much? Who's done this? Who's got me talking about trains? Look, Redman had some shocking moments. He got stepped way too easily by Jamie Elliott for his first goal. He was late to multiple contests, which, a body could have been handy in. And look, there were some fitness concerns or questions coming into the game, I believe. I don't know. I heard that he was doing a fitness test before the game, so maybe that explains it. But also, he was poor last week too. Look, I mean, if he's carrying a niggle, I think he still played, and he elected to play. If he's going to underperform, unfortunately, that's on him. I thought he had moments. Otherwise I'd give him a lower score. But I think a 4 for a leader of the club is really a 3 or, a 2. Now I'm confusing myself. I mean, I don't think he was horrible, and I don't think he's one of those guys who was just a bit behind the 8 ball a bit. And when you're a step behind against a team as good as Collingwood, it looks so much worse. I'm sure if he played like this against West Coast last week, or maybe Melbourne the week before, we're probably not even thinking about his performance. But because Collingwood was so effective inside 50 and making us pay for every mistake, his mistakes were really felt. So, yeah, I'm giving him a 4. I do think people need to chill with the hate a bit. He's quickly becoming the Andy McGrath scapegoat kind of figure. Which I get that he's not playing great footy, but also, just go easy on them. Go easy on them. Xavier Duursma, he was decent, and he's always decent, really. He's one of our more consistent players in terms of effort and pressure, which we say every week. He's not actually a bad wet weather player, by the way. I think there are some wingers who really struggle to compete in the wet because their primary skill is, tank and ball use, but Duursma doesn't really have a main strength to talk about. He's just rounded, and that really helps him in all conditions, and it probably wasn't a good week for him if you had him in your fantasy, because I think a lot of what he did was quick hand passes, maybe off the ball. He only had the 3 tackles and the 1 mark. But this is where, tackling stats can be a bit iffy, because I thought the pressure he applied was miles better than half the team. In fact, he was, I think, in our top 5 for pressure acts, and maybe even 1%ers. And although Dacos and Sidebottom, the traditional Collingwood wingers got heaps of the pill, they actually aren't Collingwood's wingers anymore. Lipinski was on 1, and I forgot who was on the other. The name escapes me. But the wingers on both teams didn't really have a huge say on the game because space was hard to come by. So I think Duursma was okay. He gets a 6. Lionel Menzie. He was subbed on in the last quarter. I liked his pressure rating. He had the same amount as Gresham did for the whole day in his short time on the field. He didn't really do much with the ball. I actually missed 2 of his touches. So my mates, we all get around Lionel. We get rowdy when he touches the ball. He's Essendon's best player, so you have to. And I went to the bathroom and I heard everyone getting rowdy. I'm like, all right, we've kicked a goal. I come back and they tell me that Lionel Menzie's touched the ball twice. So I missed 66% of his disposals, which, maybe if I saw those, maybe I'd be giving him a 9 or a 10. But I didn't, so I'm going to give him a 5. I mean, you could argue a 6 if you actually spread out his 1 quarter performance across a whole game. But I think, the match was done anyway when he was on the field for most of it, so I'm giving him a 5. Nathaniel Nate Caddy. I'm never calling him Nathaniel ever again. That was a really enjoyable game to watch. That was just a young kid playing his first ANZAC Day match and absolutely loving it. He was doing some weird stuff. He was making plenty of silly mistakes. That kick inside 50 that fell short when Hill slid in for the mark, that was, I don't know what the hell he was doing there. That I hated that. And there was that one where he was running into goal where he just couldn't pick up the ball. It could have been his third. I could keep naming more. He was doing really weird stuff, making lots of mistakes, but what I really loved was the fact that he was making so many errors and just bouncing back and competing again and again. The guy was doing plenty around the ground, really involving himself in the air, kicked 2 goals, should have had 3 or 4, led the team for score involvements, and I loved that Peter Wright contested mark where he ripped the ball out of his hands. I think it was the wrong thing to do. In that situation, you want Peter Wright kicking for goal. And if that was after the siren or something to win the game, I would be mad. But I really rate that he wanted that moment more and he wasn't afraid by the moment because, look, if I'm a young kid, I would be. Most of us in the comments here, we wouldn't want to have that shot. But Nate Caddy did. He missed, but he wanted it. So yeah, I'm giving him a 7. That was that was probably his best game of the year. There were plenty of mistakes, but he was involved a lot. Zach Reid, not even just staying fit. Because, round 2, right? Round 2 comes along, he's just played, back-to-back stinkers. Oh, not stinker, he was okay against Hawthorn and really poor against the Crows. We're saying, all right, maybe his body will last, but he's not going to be a player. But then you see this, and this has to be the main silver lining to come out of this game for Essendon fans, because Zach Reid is absolutely tearing it up at the moment. That was his best game for the year, and that's the 3rd time we've said that already. Oh, sorry, not even for the year, best game for Essendon. It's going to be really hard to top a performance like that because, it was just elite. He had the 16 disposals, 7 marks, 4 of them intercept marks, 3 contested in the wet, by the way, 4 spoils, 9 intercept possessions, 3 one-on-ones. He didn't lose one of them. It's just a fantastic defender's game of footy. And look, we talk about, when we compare him to another player, we usually say Harris Andrews, right? That was a Harris Andrews type of game for me. He looked like an elite defender. I'm not going to say all Australian because I think he has a long, long way to go until he gets there. And obviously, he's not going to make it this year. He's played some pretty poor games as well. But the more he plays like that, if that's what he's going to look like at his best, that is great because we've seen him play very good footy for us so far this year. He's been really solid for us since that Adelaide loss. In fact, since that loss, he's probably been one of our most informed players, I'd say. So great stuff from Reid. He gets an 8. He was my best on ground. He got 3 votes from me, and the way it's looking, it's pretty close between him and Durham for you guys too. I like that I just spoil the votes, all the time. I do this every week. I was actually thinking before I recorded, I won't spoil the votes, but I'm doing it anyway. Reid's partner, Ben McKay. Look, I understood the hate last week. I thought he was very poor. I don't really understand it this week. Because people are praising Reid heaps, obviously, because he was fantastic. But Reid could not have played like that without McKay there. McKay's defensive duties really helped free up both Reid and Ridley in the air. And I know people will say he's getting paid a lot to man up and defend. But if that is his role, why are we complaining if he's playing it all right? I thought he was okay. Oh yeah, I thought I didn't think he was any good. I'm gonna give him No, I'm not giving him a 6. I'll give him a 5. I just thought he kept my check quiet and didn't really do anything else. Didn't really intercept or anything, and that's probably the worry at this stage for me because this time last year he was keeping forwards quiet and intercepting, and now he kind of looks low on confidence. I get the feeling he's going to have 2 lots of fan bases hating him on Thursday, which is not going to be fun viewing because he got a lot of hate after this game, which I don't think he deserved. I think obviously players never deserve hate, but there were players much worse than McKay on ANZAC Day. I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was bad last week. I gave him a 3 last week. I've been harsh on him. I didn't think he was bad this week. Nic Martin. I'm going to give him a 6. I thought he was floaty, in and out at times. And like I said with... who was it? Who was I talking about earlier where I gave them a 6 and I talked about it? Oh, it was Redman. When I talked about Redman, a 4 being more like a 3 because of his status at the club and his leadership status, that kind of goes for Martin with this performance. Because, look, it's a 6, but it's barely a 6. And it's only a 6 because I gave McKay a 5. I got to bump up Martin a tiny bit, but gee, I reckon I could have butchered these ratings a bit. Too late to change it now. We're going to move on. Have fun deciphering these down in the comments below. Finally, to end, we've got our coach, Brad Scott. And look, this is an interesting one too, because I don't think this game was won or lost in the coach's box. I think Collingwood are far too good a team to be, having to win the game in the coach's box. I think, obviously, there was a chance we could have won, and we let the game slip late, but I don't think that's on the coaching. I think, if anything, we did well to get back in the game when Collingwood got out to an early lead. But again, we're starting very slowly, so something has to be looked at there. We also have to talk about the lineup. Before the game, I talked about it being too tall, and so did quite a few of us. And when it was dry, we did look the better team. When it was raining, Collingwood looked better. And I mean, in the end, we probably played more, not dry, but, more footy when it wasn't raining heavily with a tall lineup. Because Jones got subbed out in the fourth when it started raining again. Look, I think really, I'm going to give him a 5. I just think the Pies were too good for us. I think, it's as simple as that. You can't really blame the coaching because we were in it for, large parts of this game. We were actually playing good footy for about 80% of it, I said in my preview. I said that for 80% of this game, the Bombers were right in it with the best team in the comp, and for 20%, we let our heads down, we were a step behind, and they pounced. And that's as simple as that. As Brad Scott often says, the comp is tight, and if you're just a step behind, a fraction off, they make you pay. Teams like Collingwood. And yeah, look, I just thought they're a much better team than us. I can't really blame the coach for a game like this. If we are to go out and lose against North Melbourne like this, I would happily give Scott a 3 or a 2. I've given him a 2 before, by the way. I gave him a 2 for the Crows game. But yeah, I'm going to give him a 5 for this one. I don't think this had anything to do with... Or did it? I think this is a game really just, a rebuilding team going up against a team that's unfortunately for us in the premiership window. But that is that. That is a food coma player rating from ANZAC Day. I reckon this might have been one of the messiest rating videos so far, but maybe that's a nice little nod to the head to the way we played on Friday. But yeah, cheers for watching. No upload tomorrow. I think, unless there's something big that happens. I'm just gonna have a nice day off for my birthday. Happy birthday, Felix! And then on Wednesday, we're gonna have the preview for the North game out. And I've got to say, guys, I don't like these weekday games for my schedule. They're messing with my brain. I don't even know what day it is anymore. But yeah, cheers for watching. Like if you enjoyed. Subscribe down below. And go Bombers.